Welcome to React Times.
Hello, hello.
I do like that.
If it's one thing that has become increasingly apparent among the Dead by Daylight player base, it is a general increase in the number of disconnecting survivors in any given match.
Yep.
Attitudes seem to be an all-time low, and many content creators as well appear to be frustrated with the current state of the game. It's unlike anything I've ever seen in all of my years of playing it. So today we're asking, has DBD become less fun? To do this, we'll start by looking at an increasingly...
I don't know where he's going with this, but I think in general the game started caring way less about being a fun video game and started caring a lot about, like, competitive balance. Not comp, like the comp mode of the game, like people that play in tournaments, but, like, making pubs very rigid when it comes to, like, skill-based matchmaking, having really, really strong perks. Even though we did the 6.10 patch, we still, like, kept strong perks on both sides, keeping strong add-ons that have no right to be in the game, strong items that have no right to be in the game. Like, they really just kind of curved the game more towards sweat and winning on both sides, and not so much about, like, partying and, like, just messing around, you know? Just, like, Clash, good lord, please, no. If you buffed Pig, during 100% temporary, she almost no chase power. Strong low MMR, yep. And that's why Pig still consistently has really good traps, because this are good stats, because even though she's not necessarily, like, you know, she's not necessarily good at high MMR or even mid MMR, I would argue. She's a good pump stopper, so she has good stats. But I'm not saying, but I feel like there's a fallacy in that argument, because that means never touch her ever, because you don't want to do that. But you can definitely change her in a way if you wanted to. It's just going to take some thought and some, like, a think tank to modify her in a way that's pub friendly and still good, you know?
Pure playstyle in camping and tunneling. We'll also discuss the introduction of matchmaking ratings, reflect on Update 6.1.0's meta update and the long-term effects it had, consider what it means to win a round of DBD, and finally, reflect on the most recent killer release, The Night, and look at its potential impact on the meta. I'll be honest, I myself have become increasingly frustrated with the gameplay in DBD. This video is serving as a canvas for me to analyze some core elements which I think have contributed to my overall feelings about the state of the game.
Wow.
So with that in mind...
I think it's so interesting, because, like, it's, at this point, it's like both sides are saying they don't have a good time. You know what I'm saying? Like, both sides are saying they're not having a good time. It's not a killer thing, it's not a survivor thing. Like, both sides think the game sucks right now, for the most part. There, of course, you have the, like, super duper positive content creators. Like, yeah, I'm milking your positivity for views. Yeah, okay. But, like, a lot of people are, like, both sides are pretty disgruntled. And I think that's not a good thing. That's not a good sign. That's not a good sign that both sides are upset, because that's both populations, right? Because, yeah, if the game's, you know, like, before 6.1, the game was a lot more survivor-sided, so, like, it was more like a killer versus survivor thing. But now it's both sides are upset, so that's not good. You have united them in upsetness, which is not great. Hi, Mocha. How's it going?
Particularly interested to hear your opinions in the comment section about how you're feeling about the current state of the game yourselves. And as always, if you enjoy this content, feel free to subscribe. Anyway, let's get on with it. Camping and tunneling are two often controversial phrases in the DBD space. Let's start by discussing camping. This refers to when a killer remains within close proximity to a hooked survivor, forcing their teammates to either focus on the generators and escape as quickly as possible, or they can attempt a dangerous save to keep their teammate in the matchup. The goal of the killer here is to ensure the sacrifice of the singular hooked survivor, or force their teammates off of generators into a risky play. Some killers excel more than others with camping. Bubba and the Trickster, for example, are incredibly difficult to safely.
We were talking about that in the Ops video.
In solo queue survivor lobbies, this can be a particularly effective tactic as well, as the lack of communication between players often leads to mistakes.
It always comes down to that. It always comes down to the lack of communication. That's why that mock-up that Scott made a long time ago about, like, a communication wheel. Like solo queue is the, like, so much stuff that's frustrating about this game doesn't work if you communicate. I'm not saying give everybody, like, comms at the same time, right? Like, just have voice comms in DBD, but, like, something as simple as just, like, a communicate wheel or the ability to, like, ping things would just, like, do so much. It really would. It really, really would.
Camping a survivor can sometimes lead to a snowball effect, giving a killer an easy win, or at least a large advantage in the early game. This is where a lot of debate surrounds this particular playstyle. When is it okay to camp? For me, I try to avoid it as much as possible when I play the killer role. When there are 2 or less generators remaining, and all 4 survivors are alive, I will sometimes hope to secure the kill before the
like camping and tunneling, I've talked about this before. Camping and tunneling are very, very, very intense. Oh, why does it turn off the subtitles every single time? I hate that. I wish it just stayed up there every single time. Camping and tunneling are very, very intense tactics that are very sweaty and get results. Doing it 4 or 5 gens is weird because you're not down at all. Like you're not in a place. You're not in a place where you need to catch up at all. You're not in a place where you need to exert that much pressure yet. Like you are theoretically fine. When you're just doing it at like 2 or less gens, that's the right play. If nobody's dead by 2 gens and dead by daylight and you're playing killer, you're probably, you may not lose for sure, but it's very likely. It's very highly likely you'll lose if somebody's not dead by 2 gens. So you got to make that happen one way or another as quick as possible if you want to actually secure a victory.
Last 2 generators finish to try and gain an advantage, but increasingly, killer players are opting to camp a survivor of 4 to 5 gens. They want the guaranteed advantage. The sooner you can make the match a 3v1, you can sometimes essentially guarantee the win. This leads us to the term tunneling.
But this also, like we were saying earlier, this also preys upon like the lack of communication in solo queue. Because if those 3, even just the 3 of them that weren't on hook were in comms together or in a stack, they'd just be like, okay, we do the gens and we leave, and it results in a 1k. It's the lack of communication that causes that.
If you are hoping to remove a survivor from the match as quickly as possible, and are capable of counting to 10 to avoid base kit borrowed time, you can choose to target the same survivor over and over again once they've been unhooked. Sometimes this can even be a quicker and more effective way of removing an
and there's no DS, so it doesn't matter.
To get that early game
there's no
advantage.
threat, there's no risk to do it.
Again, when there are 2 or less generators in a match, I will sometimes consider tunneling myself.
Yep.
But I think most players understand why a killer has minimal options at that point if 4 survivors still remain. But the issue tends to be that increasingly I am seeing killers camp and tunnel at the early game stage, sometimes before a singular gen has been completed. I'd even argue it is now more frequent than it has ever been in the game.
Yep, it is.
But why? Why has this playstyle increased?
Because there's no risk of DS. I'm like a broken record at this point. There's no risk of DS. Everybody was scared of DS. That's why people didn't tunnel as much. DS used to be really strong because of its 5-second stun. Nope. Not a thing anymore. You used to be scared of picking somebody up because they might DS you and start a whole new chase that would be 16, 20, 30 seconds. You didn't want to deal with that. So it was risky. It was whiskey. Not risky anymore. Because nobody runs DS. Because DS is 3 seconds. So you stun them and you just get down like, what? We saw that odds match. That Meg lasted, what, 8 seconds after her stun? Like, she didn't live very long after that, huh? So that's why nobody runs DS. So nobody running DS means I can do whatever I want. There's no risk anymore. Yep. Hey, Beast, how's it going? Was he running Deadlock? No, he's running Thrilling Tremors.
Maybe there can be some answers found in the 6.1.0 update. The 19th of July, 2022. The day that Dead Hard died.
Good.
Never mind, pretty much everyone is running it these days still. But this update did see a dramatic shift in the DBD.
I love how nobody was saying that until Otts put out his stats. I love that nobody was saying that until Otts put out his stats. That's crazy how much like the community shifted when they saw that. Like they saw that and everybody's minds changed. It's so funny. That's so it just goes to show you how much reach that has, you know? Like that tweet came out and everybody's mind changed. Like some people were probably thinking it and not saying anything. And there's probably tweets here and there from people saying that was like, oh well, you know, maybe Dead Hard's still stupid. But like it didn't now everybody believes it again. Everybody's on board again.
Meta. Many second chance survivor perks such as Dead Hard and Decisive Strike.
Yeah, we've talked about that before, Leo. It's like Pyramid Head retroactively is not as strong as he used to be in terms of just like a tier list conversation because nobody runs DS anymore and he was a good DS circumventer, which is funny.
A base kit version of Borrowed Time was introduced, guaranteeing some protection when unhooked. Killer was also adjusted. Cooldowns after successful hits, kicking generators and pallets, etc. were all sped up by 10%. Survivor initial speed boost when hit was also reduced by 10%. Kicking generators was incentivized with a 2.5% hit to progress when initially struck, and anti-generator perks reflected this encouragement with buffs to overcharge and eruption. It was a fairly substantial buff to the killer, and it definitely succeeded in shaking up the meta. I did a whole video discussing this update 4 or so months ago. I thought it might be good to look over what I predicted at the end of said video, and see what, if anything, was correct. Here are bullet points of what I suggested would come next after this update. I said that survivors would bring more gen speed up perks. There would be a greater variety of killers played. There would be more camping and tunneling. Killers would bring more gen slowdown. Kill rates would see an increase. And an overall drop in survivor players.
Yeah, we have less survivor players, more camping and tunneling. Greater variety? Not really. It's still top 5, top 10 characters in the game I see all the time. Survivors bring more gen speed perks and items. Killers bring more slowdown. Yep. So besides, like, the variety, yeah.
Survivors have certainly adapted. I see excellent dead hards frequently now. Survivors have gotten very skilled with it, to be honest. And generator speed up perks are as popular as ever with hyperfocus, prove thyself, and even more toolboxes are being brought from what I can tell.
And that's because they made them cheaper. They made them cheaper because of the blood web adjustment. So now these good items are just like more frequent. So, yeah.
See more repressed alliance though, but you do see it occasionally. There is definitely a better variety of killers. No longer is it just Blight and Nurse. Wesker and Legion are now heavily in the mix too. Yippee! Camping and tunneling, as mentioned prior, has seen an increase and does feel like a stronger playstyle now. Kill rates have indeed increased from 51 to 53% across all killers in June 2022, now up to 56 to 61% as of September. In terms of number of survivor players, it's difficult to judge. Killer queues haven't improved much, if at all, since the update first went live. It does feel very time of day dependent, so this one is hard to measure, but I've certainly seen an increase in survivor players disconnecting during a match.
Yep.
That's an interesting observation, which may suggest an increase in frustration from that side of the game, though the initial DC penalty has been shortened, so this may be a contributing factor to this. So what does this information mean? It could be suggested that survivors have adapted to increasingly try to get gens done as quickly as possible, using perks and toolboxes to successfully escape the match as soon as they can. Killer players now feel able to play other characters rather than just the strongest ones as well. I've even seen some clowns and dredges occasionally. Camping and tunneling are more effective tactics, and increasingly killer players opt to try and get an early advantage in a matchup. It certainly feels like chases are no longer either side's focus. Kill rates have on average gone up across all killers, so the 6.1.0 update was indeed a buff.
Would y'all DC? People probably still would.
Survivors are DCing at a higher rate, implying
if people don't want to play a game, they're not going to play a game. Even if the forfeit button costs 10 minutes, people will forfeit. Like I was saying this before we even got into reacting to videos. It's like forfeiting is a normal thing outside of DBD and other games and real life. You know, people give up. It's a thing that happens. They're gonna do it no matter what. People will give up, but like they're like even in like Siege, the other game I play, like when you play like ranked and you leave, like you get a huge penalty, huge. People do it all the time when I play ranked. People leave all the time. People don't care. People leave, and they're super severe with their penalty for it. I think it's like one time I game crashed. I was playing ranked and I was gone for like 50 minutes or something like that. It was crazy. It was crazy, but like people still DC all the time in ranked. Yeah, like people still DC all the time in ranked. They don't care. People want to leave. People want to leave, and that just boils DBD gamers' blood. I can't believe they leave the game. People are gonna quit if they don't want to play. People are gonna quit if they don't want to play. They will do anything. You could increase that penalty to do it to Siege's level, make it 50 minutes an hour. First DC, people still do it. People still do it, man. People still do it, dude.
Full of frustration when playing the game. So killers are more able to secure kills now. But why does that matter? Dead by Daylight has 2 win conditions: escaping as the survivor.
This is the Twins theme gives me PTSD because that was like the buggiest patch I've ever played in this game. So every time I hear that theme, I'm just like, I just immediately get anxious. It's so funny that I still have that reaction to it years later. I just go, ooh, uncomfy.
Survivor as the killer role. The game itself perceives a match as 4 individual 1v1s, meaning each survivor is an individual win state or a lose state. Simply put, every survivor that is killed by the killer is a win, but every escape is a loss. Among the player base, for Killer, a win is considered to be a 3 to 4 kill
Yep.
game, 0 to 1 being a loss, and a 2k equating to a draw.
Yep.
Though from the survivor perspective, every survivor that is sacrificed has essentially lost that match. If we do
Not
look at
necessarily.
every survivor in every match as its own individual win state, then perhaps this explains a few things in DBD.
Even if I die and the rest of my team gets out, I'm cool with that. Right? We had a gamer earlier that was running. They were running 4 slowdown, but they're running 3 slowdown and like super strong add-ons, and we got a 2 out, and I was pretty happy about that because I'm like, we didn't reward them for that, right? They got a tie. They got a tie for running like a super sweaty like over the top build, right? I was happy with that. I don't necessarily agree with that.
The mindset of needing to camp and tunnel an individual out of the match as soon as possible is a way to ensure at least one form of victory. It also avoids the dreaded 0 kill scenario, which can be quite deflating as a killer. It may also explain why some individuals will slug for the 4k. This means to leave survivors slugged on the ground, sometimes aimlessly searching for the final survivor,
Aimlessly,
desperately
yeah.
looking for 4 kills in that match.
Yep.
Perhaps to some, even one escape is like losing. This may soon be quite rare
Yep.
though, as base kit Unbreakable will perhaps make its way into the game.
And this talks about his other video that he put out that I liked a lot, where he was talking about like, are content creators bad for the game? I think that's one thing that like content creators do negatively, very severely affect the game with is they kind of popularized the idea that you should always go for a 4K, or as survivor you should always like escape, right? Like, 2 very, very unhealthy things for the, like, not unhealthy things, because somebody's gonna be like, are you saying I shouldn't 4K as the killer? And then their head explodes because this game is like their life. They breathe, eat, sleep, dead by daylight. And if you even imply that my side is not the right one for even a second, I'm going to unsubscribe because you've insulted my side. Shut the fuck up. Go outside, touch some grass. Man, I hate this community. Anyways. That was an aside. Anyways. Yeah, like, content creators really, like, enforce, like, this idea of, like, all or nothing in their like, victory, whether that be survivor or killer. They really kind of put out this idea of all or nothing on both sides. Because, like, you know, that's what draws viewers. It's what draws viewers into their streams is doing well, right? So they kind of encourage this all or nothing gameplay and push that onto you, even though that's not realistically how the games work outside of that zone. But now everybody wants that all or nothing gameplay. So, like, even though it's like necessarily it doesn't really matter. Like, you get a 3K and somebody gets hatched, like, you get a lot of points, you won the match. Like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to them because, you know, content creators have pushed this all or nothing playstyle on both sides. So.
Although no confirmation as to when this might be as of yet. But what do you win? More blood points? Do we think that players are sweating for the W because of a few more blood points?
I would argue you don't. I would argue you don't. You spend so much time. If you can't find that 4th survivor for a long time and they're ratting, you may end up sitting in that match so long that you literally, like, could have been getting more points in the next match. Same reason farming's dumb, right? Because you get points naturally by playing the game. So slowing it down and trying to, like, milk the match for a longer time, like, you could just be in the next match with quick queues getting those points somewhere else. So it's like, it's not even for the blood points necessarily.
Maybe not. So what else is there? Well, there is the invisible MMR that was introduced back in update 5.2.0.
I hate that thing so much. That was a big shift in the way people play the game. Because even though it theoretically doesn't matter, you have set the goal, right? You have said winning matters. Even if the reward is nothing, it's an invisible number. You have set a goal, and people like to achieve goals. You set the bar, and that changed the way everybody plays the game. Not fully. There was always people that sweat before MMR. Don't get me wrong. There were always people that played hard, but like, it came from inside, right? It's DBD behavior themselves saying winning now matters, and everybody else went with the program, right? People that may have not necessarily, you know, had a goal in mind now have a goal, you know?
A numerical value assigned to your overall survivor play or each individual killer, which ideally tries to match you with an equally skilled lobby. So the idea here is that on average, your survivor lobby will match you with a killer of equal measure. and vice versa. As killer, you'll get an equally skillful team of survivors to deal with. The goal here is to keep the game fair with a competitive challenge. It's not fun to be continually outmatched by your opponent, nor enjoyable to continually win against those less experienced than yourself. MMR appears to work with an average though, so you might be a particularly strong survivor player with a higher MMR, but could receive an average killer player and 3 dreadful survivor teammates. Unless you're the one the killer chooses to chase, you're unlikely to win that match. MMR was quite an unpopular addition to the game, and to this day still, there aren't many out there defending its introduction. Which is strange, because for a long time, and still to this day, people complain about DBD's balance. They want the game to feel fairer for everyone. MMR is a feature which to some degree, though not perfect, attempts to ensure some degree of matchmaking balance. But the result of this is
good. MMR with stringent ranks does, but that's not what DBD has. It's kind of general and very soft. Right? When I played like Street Fighter, for example, the ranks were very rigid. If I was in platinum, and on the other side is diamond, and the other side below that is gold, I would sometimes fight ultra gold players, and sometimes I would fight ultra plats, and sometimes I would fight just normal diamonds who were the entry level diamonds. Like, I would never end up fighting like a bronze player, for example, or a warlord, which would be the top. I would never ever fight those people. In DBD, you can fight those people. In DBD, you could be a gold player and somehow get matched up with a rookie, which is the lowest rank in Street Fighter, because this game is so like lax with its matchmaking that like it essentially in a certain sense doesn't matter. In a certain sense, it doesn't matter because it is so like intangible. It is so like just random with what it picks, and it's like, and adding that to the soft cap of the 1600, it's like it doesn't work. It doesn't achieve its goal. It doesn't achieve its goal because other matchmaking systems that do work make sure that that doesn't happen, even if queue times are long. Now, that's the back end of it, right? Is like they don't want long queue times. And tinfoil hat, maybe that's why it's bad on purpose, so queue times stay okay. But like, that's why it doesn't work.
Every game feels competitive, which although exhilarating at times, can also be quite tiring. I wonder if this is why increasingly, killers find it justified to camp and or tunnel a survivor out as soon as possible, because the 3v1 is a far less stressful situation for them. But as a result, survivors feel increasingly driven to bring meta-gen perks to make up for these situations as well. I suspect many of those who blamed their losses on the lack of balance more so wanted the ability to win without having to try quite as hard.
There it is. There it is, and that's why I hate this community so much sometimes. There that is. That's why. I can't have a solid conversation in this community with people because so many people have just, they want their side to win. And that's what it boils down to. Even if you try to masquerade it, if you try to hide it and gaslight people, like, no, it's good for the health of the game. There are people that just only care about killer. Or there are people that only care about survivor. And that's it. That's all they give a crap about. And they try to hide it, try to mask it as like, I'm trying to do what's good for the health of the game. So many people want that. Both sides. So many people just want survivors to win easy. So many killers want to just win easy. And that's what it boils down to. And that's why it's so frustrating to have a conversation about this game. And what's best for it. Because everybody's out for themselves. Whether they tell you to your face or not, everybody's out to themselves. And it makes, like, it's so stressful to try and have conversations about this game. It wears me out. It wears me out to have conversations about this game because I have to navigate your bias while talking to you. I have to, A, listen to what you're saying, and then B, figure out why you're so biased and what side you're biased towards in the middle of that conversation, and then try to, like, figure out, like, okay, is there truth to what you're saying, or are you just coming at me because you're a killer main, or are you coming at me because you're a survivor main, and of course that's what you want. Because you want to secretly you just want to win. Secretly you just want to win, right? You don't want what's good for the game. Secretly you just want to win. This game isn't balanced because I didn't get to 4K or escape out of a game. Yeah, literally. Literally. That. It's just, it makes it so awful to have conversations about this game because I just have to, it's like I'm fighting bias all the time. I'm fighting bias. It's why I don't deal with politics. It's the same thing. I can't have a conversation with anybody about what's good for my nation or even my state, my local area, because I'm having to fight bias. And it's the same way with like DBD. It's like you end up just fighting bias so much that you can't find a good place. Can't find a good place, and it's just so disappointing.
Blaming balance has maybe unintentionally had the opposite effect. And this is the trouble. When a less
Alvin, I cannot tell you how many people actually feel that way. Like, unironically. Like, I know you're memeing. I'm not biased for only ever playing Killer. You're Survivor biased because you play Survivor once. People feel that way. People really do. And going back to the content creator conversation, content creators push that idea. They push that. They push those feelings. It's garbage, dude. It's terrible. They literally push that. They literally push that. It's so terrible.
Killer who doesn't camp or tunnel swiftly loses to a Survivor sweat squad, they now begin to consider sweatier tactics, because continually losing doesn't feel good. It's a cycle, all in the name of an invisible MMR value, because even if unseen, people want the number to go up.
See, told you.
So the meta perks and meta playstyles become increasingly prominent, as MMR ensures you're always struggling back and forth. But this has always been an issue, no? Camping and tunneling are as old as Bubba, so why does it feel like it's getting worse recently? Dead by Daylight has a new killer in town, the Knight. Perhaps one of the least popular updates made.
Come on, Swift!
Also
Come
one of the most
on,
bug-riddled, rivaling that of the Binding of Kin.
I got the
Knight's power is it is able to create a patrol route for AI-driven guards who can defend an area. They will then pursue survivors they spot for a time. These guards can also be utilised to kick generators and break walls and pallets. Generally speaking, it's quite a weak power, but can shut down a loop quite effectively. This has driven a whole W approach to counter him. It's another anti-loop killer with minimal fun ways to interact with. Where I think it's been quite interesting though, is killer players have had to try and win with an incredibly weak killer. A killer that I would suggest, in some ways, is weaker than killers like Clown. But
I don't think he's weaker. I don't think he's weaker than Clown, but he is a very, very. I think he's like the worst M2 killer. I don't know where that puts him necessarily, but he is definitely weak.
Camping for one. You can use your guards to prevent at least one survivor supporting the unhook altogether.
That's an exploit try. That's an exploit.
Minimally going to be trading one survivor for
They'll
another,
probably patch that.
or potentially drawing all survivors off of generators to provide bodies for the save. What else though? Defending 3 gens. We mentioned earlier the new gen slowdown meta for killers. Call of Brine, Overcharge and Eruption are incredibly oppressive, and I think many killers really saw its potential with the Knight and his ability to protect 3 gens with his guards. Now, are people still playing the Knight? No, the Knight sucks, but these struggles and tactics
That's
were
brutal,
highlighted
but it's
to
true.
many killer players.
I'm gonna play him once
Since
a stream
the Knight's
typically.
release, I've seen a dramatic increase in camping, tunneling, focus on protecting a 3 gen, and more common use of majority gen slowdown perks.
Huh?
Essentially, the Knight.
Yeah, the Knight players play. Night players play really mean. He's right. Every Night player I run into on Survivor plays really mean. Like he's right. They do camp it. They do camp. They do tunnel. They're usually running at least 3 slowdown. Like they are gamers, dude. They're chugging the monster and shoving Doritos down their throat. They're intense. They all play that way. He's right. Disparity between killers. Yeah, I've talked about this before actually. Yeah, I've actually talked about this for, hold on. Let's see, DBD killer tier list. This is a very, very old video I made, so those of you who have been with the stream or been with the YouTube for a while. By the way, this is how this defaults, which look at how it defaulted. Everybody and then Night. This is a very, very old video that I made. I was talking about the disparity between killers, because most people make tier lists like this, right? It's like S tier, A tier, B tier, C tier, D tier. But in reality, it's a lot more like complex, right? Yeah, so like most people just do S, A, B, C, D, right? But in reality, it's like this. There's S, S plus, S minus, A plus, A minus, you know? So like, for example, Nurse obviously is going to be like S plus, right? She's the best. Whereas Blight can't literally go through walls, so he's probably going to be S. Spirit has incredibly intense speed, especially if you mother-daughter ring, probably S minus, right? We'll do, let's look at like some of like the weaker characters in the game. Clown, probably like C minus, right? He has anti-chase, but on that he doesn't have anything. Sadako, probably like C plus. She's got map mobility, passive phasing, but can't do anything about pallets. Ghostface, probably C. He has the ability to at least insta-down people. Oni, really, really good. Probably not Probably not like A+, because like if you just pre-throw pallets and deny his power to the very end, and if you don't snowball, not great. Artist a great example. I think Artist probably is above Oni. Obviously she has guaranteed hits if she sets up her birds correctly. But other than that, you know, not so much. Wesken's A+. He has built-in slowdown. He has great anti-chase. He has hindered as well. He's just got everything. He can't like do crazy stuff like with mother-daughtering. He can't do like crazy text like with Blight. Obviously can't go through walls. But take like somebody who I consider probably like maybe not the worst killer in the game, but bottom 3. Like Myers. We'll put like Pig up here because Pig's got the head traps. So that makes her significantly better. Say Trapper against a Swift. Probably D as well. Now let's take this in perspective, right? Because we're not gonna do every killer, right? We're not gonna do a whole tier list here. But like look at this in comparison now. Look at this comparison now. Now do you see how far apart these killers are? Now that we put it like this instead of just A, B, C, D, right? Let's take demo. Just for put them right there. Just for some perspective. Now do you see how like bad the killer disparity is now that we put it this way? Because this is how it really is. It's not S, A, B, C, D. There's layers to this. So if you put it in the plus, normal, minus, you see how like Myers is so far away from Nurse. So far away from Nurse. So far away. So far away. Like he's like on the other end of the planet. Other end of the planet, right? Like, and that's why it's so hard to balance this game on the killer side of things. Because like, if you do something to buff killers in general, like they did, that's gonna make somebody like Wesker really, really strong. Like, that might bump him up to like S-, right? Which would be fine for him because like, he was already super good, but that only brings Myers to like C if they like buff killers, right? So he's still in an awful spot, but then now he's an S-, or he might go to an S, you know, like he might get even more dangerous and be even more unfun to face, while Myers only barely gets up to a C, right? It's just like, it makes it really, really hard to balance. It makes it really, really hard to balance. Do you want Nurse breaking through the ceiling and getting even stronger just to bring Myers up to C tier? Like, it's hard to balance this game around that for that reason. Like, it really is. It really is. So if you look at somebody like the Knight, right? Like, you put somebody like the Knight, who I would say, that's a hard one. I think him and Sadako are kind of comparable because he has anti-chase but no map mobility, but she has no anti-chase but she has map mobility. I think they're kind of comparable. They're kind of like both bad killers that excel at one thing and are just completely awful at the other, you know? So like, if you want to buff Knight or do like a general buff that helps Knight, you might put him up to B, but then you got to worry about Blight being better and stuff like that. And it's just like, it just puts you in this scenario of just like, darned if you do, darned if you don't. Comparably mid. Yep, comparably mid. Aggressively all right. So yeah, that's one of the things that makes balance in this game super hard. I didn't mean to switch to that screen. Oops. To tag you. Oh, it's okay. We're saying average add-ons as if it were sort of strong solo. This is just in general. All kinds of players, Leo. All kinds of players. All kinds of players. That's what tier lists are about.
But one potentially lasting outcome is that killers
both the outliers and
simple,
the average,
but more effective tactics, which are very effective on all-round better killers. So what does all this mean for Dead by Daylight and its future?
Trapper S tier, sure, bud.
Many players since DBD's inception have blamed balance for their losses. A small portion of the player base have attributed their ego and ability at video games to whether or not they can win at Dead by Daylight. I suspect that over time, as these voices became ever louder, behaviour have taken them into increasing consideration. I'm sure the number of players organising tournaments and the like have also not gone unnoticed. Could behaviour have begun to consider if DBD could be a competitive game?
No, please.
Which it certainly can be. The trouble is, it is a redirection of the core gameplay and its audience.
Yeah, because it's different.
Most players are not competitive. As we've discussed in the past, they are horror fans, and DBD has always given off casual vibes.
Yep.
Boasting relatively low skill ceilings for gameplay, simple to understand mechanics,
yep,
and randomized factors making...
That was my main problem with the Choi video. Like, when Choi was talking about balancing the game, is he was complicating the game. Like, I love Choi. Choi is great content. Seems like a great dude. But, like, that was my problem with the Choi video. It was like, he was complicating the game. But that's, like, that's what brings people to DBD, is that it has... In general, it has a lower skill ceiling to learn as a video game. So it can get a lot of people in. You cannot do that? Oh, yes, I can. Oh, yes, I can, Leo. And I will. And I'll continue to do it. I can definitely do that.
Perpetually uncertain.
Matter of fact, that's how stats works. You have to take in the outliers. I don't know if you've taken stats like either in high school or college, but that's what you have to do. You have to consider all factors. Just because something is an outlier does not mean it does not matter to the data that you're analyzing. It's still something you got to take into account. Like, you don't just ignore those stats because you don't like them or you think that it's too complicated. So, yeah, you can't do that.
However, this has changed over time. Since MMR was introduced, the competitive elements of the community have grown in number, and the remaining
Which means
players
no, that's not how that works. You don't just ignore things. And if you're going by, you can't sit on this high horse too of like, oh well, you know, when DBD puts out, when Behavior themselves put out stats, those aren't representative. Those aren't truly representative. But then go, oh well, we don't have stats, so we just can't argue anything. I'm going to disagree with you, but like, we don't have the stats, so we should just never talk about the game ever. Will DBD make the game more competitive? Good question.
Try asking again.
See, you insulted the conch, and now it is. I was upset.
They're playing less or not at all. The game has become increasingly predictable. Killer playstyles are ever more competitively driven, with camping and tunneling, something that has always made comp DBD unbearable to watch for me, with survivors leaning ever more towards gen rushing perks or just DCing altogether at the first sign of defeat. The meta shift in 6.1.0 has left matches feeling longer, less rewarding, and sometimes outright tedious for survivor players. Matches rarely feel that distinct from one another now. The worst bit is I think the only meta change we, as a community, all wanted was a nerf to Dead Hard. And then there is the Knight, the cherry on top.
That was close.
An incredibly boring to play as and play against weak killer, who has potentially encouraged the more competitive elements of killer gameplay further. To be clear as well, I'm not saying it's the player's fault either. I play plenty of killer. I choose to only bring 2 gen slowdown perks and avoid eruption and dead man switch because to me they're not fun. Playing killer like this can be pretty challenging and sometimes miserable, so I don't really blame anyone for playing more competitively. Especially as it's rare to not have survivors drag you to a specific map with an offering these days, desperately looking for an advantage themselves. I blame the game's design and the redirection of its core.
It's ultimately on behavior. Like, you can get mad about this stuff all you want, but it's ultimately on behavior. It's not up to us. We just play the game, dude. We don't have to come up with these amazing ideas and stuff. And that's why you see so many content creators when they go into like their fully laid out plans on how the game should be balanced, like they suck. Because we're just players. We don't make the game. That's up to behavior, right? That's up for them to do. We can give suggestions, we can have feelings. And that's why I think we don't need hard stats for every feeling we have about the game, right? Like, we have experiences and things that happen. And if they happen consistently, there's a correlation there, right? We don't need to have hard stats to mention, hey, maybe this whole over Bran eruption thing is annoying. Maybe brand new parts being common in the game is not a good thing. If you consistently run into brand new parts and every time the gens go way faster, there might be something to that. You don't need to have hard stats to be like, oh, well, do I have to wait for Behavior Mommy to put out the stats on that? No. You can still have a feeling and go, that kind of sucks. That seems like that sucks. I don't want to deal with that. That seems unfun. I'm not having a good time. And talk about that. I don't like this idea that you have to have hard stats for everything. That doesn't make sense to me. Because that's how we get to a better place. That's how we get to a better place in the game. If you want to like gatekeep the ability to have conversations about balance behind did you have hard stats for literally everything all the time, the game's not going to go anywhere. Ever. You're not going to go anywhere ever. Hey, Progressive, what's up? Yeah, because the blood point reduction, they're now super common. And that was their old balancing factor, is that they were at least rare or cost inefficient to bring every match. Now it's not, so now they're just everywhere. So, but I guess I don't have stats to say that, even though I run in BMPs all the time. There are BMPs in a bunch of my Survivor matches all the time. But, you know, that doesn't matter, because it's not stats.
Argued that Dead by Daylight is a casual party game. Everything about the uncertainty, the mechanics and special events like dressing up as a snowman supported that idea. But I've realised I was wrong. DBD was a casual party game, but MMR has made it competitive. It's taken a while for the mindset to settle for the player base, but I think it finally has, and I don't think it is something that will be easily reversed. Unfortunately, solo queue Survivor has suffered the most, and there is no real way of fixing it. You can add a ping system to bring it up to survive with friends capabilities, but is that what you really want? A greater lean towards competitive play. The beauty, the chaos, and the uncertainty are becoming ever diminished in DBD. Increasingly, it feels like video horror society. You know, the well-balanced asymmetrical horror game that no one wants to play because it's not fun. Practically every match is a
Oh! 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 Oh, he's swinging! He's swinging! Oh, he's swinging! Oh, he's swinging!
competitive sweat fest. So that's where I think DBD is at. On an almost irreversible road that, unless they take a U-turn on some of these huge design decisions, which is unlikely, will continue to worsen for more casual enjoyers of the game. I think increasingly players will continue to burn out and leave the game or heavily reduce their playtime because playing it feels like a lot of effort, whilst the game becomes ever increasingly stale. But what do you think? Have you enjoyed the game more or less since MMR was introduced? Have you seen an increase in camping and tunneling at all? How do you see the future of DBD looking? I genuinely would love to hear your thoughts.
DBD, he's right, because DBD has become boring.
I still love Dead by Daylight, but it's doing everything it can to push me away.
That's what I feel. That's what I feel right there. That was my feeling summarized. I'm like, I like this game. I still have fun like 80% of the time I play it, but it is definitely becoming a sweat game. And I didn't play DBD because it was a sweat game. It was like he said, I played it because I like horror movies. I like horror aesthetic. And it's a fun game that I can play infinitely that has a horror aesthetic. Isn't that neat? Now you have to be good. Now you have to do well. Now you have to have a general idea of what's going on, or at least bring perks strong enough to pretend to cosplay that you're good, or throw pallets super early to pretend that you're good. Either way, you gotta sweat now. And eventually that will drive away the casual player base. It will. And that might be, we may not kill DBD through some big update, but we may dwindle the player base over time to a point where it does die. Because some people will be into that, and a lot of people won't be. A lot of people don't play super intense competitive games. Like, usually those populations are way smaller. So, we'll see. We will see, won't we? We will see.
Thanks for listening, everyone, and have an amazing...
Yeah, he DC'd. Nice. Hey, Carabobera. How are you, friend? What's going on? How are you, bud? Previous tier list, why you place Nurse to the top and then Sadako at the top, with Wesker and Plague the second? So you gotta have consistent logic? But you're not having consistent logic. Why do I have to have consistent logic? You don't. You don't. You care about stats only when they benefit you. I don't give a shit about logic. You don't. Put Nurse at the top because she can literally go through walls and down people and has the best add-ons in the game. Everybody knows that. We'll shit on behavior stats whenever we want. Well, we'll talk about behavior stats not being accurate ever. Like everybody talks about behavior stats being inaccurate. But whenever we disagree with an argument, it's like, oh wait, the behavior stats. Nobody cares. I can bring up Nightlight right now. I'll bring up Nightlight and it has stats. But then you're like, oh well, wait, those are self-reported. You can't use those. It doesn't matter. Oh, that technically that must mean that Mastermind's the strongest killer in the game. You know, Wesker's the strongest killer because he has the highest the highest pick rate right now. Look at that. You know? Like you can do whatever you want to argue and be like, your stats aren't correct. Dude, I was a social studies teacher for 5 years. You think I'm new to this? People try to disprove stats all the time. You go to any political site, they're like, you're not using stats. You can cherry pick whatever stat you want. You can disprove any stat you want. That's why it's so hard. It's so hard to, like, that's why history is such a complex thing, because it's taught through different people's perspectives. Used with stats or first-hand encounters that may be flawed or may be biased. You are coming up the wrong tree. You are coming up the wrong tree. I am trained for this. I have dealt with this. I have taught kids for this. I have taught people for this. The experiences matter. Experiences matter because that is still a take. That is still okay. Let me describe this for you, because you also do a mix of both, which is why I'm finding it so strange that you're coming after me for doing a mix for both. I think you're just upset that I disagreed with you, because you also do a mix of both, and talk a ton a ton about your personal experiences of the game and reflect them as truth on the game. But when you get disagreed with, you're like, there's no stats for that. When I'm looking at an event, let's say there was a battle like right in my house. Let's say like it's expansion period. There was a battle between two groups of people right in this land that I am on like hundreds of years ago, right? Obviously, one side is going to be like, we were the heroes and we were trying to, save our land or whatever. And the other side is going to be like, well, they hurt us. So we were just defending ourselves. They're both going to pretend they're the heroes, no matter what side of the fight it was. They're both going to pretend that they're the heroes. But those feelings still matter. Those experiences still matter. Why did he think that he was the hero? Was it because they took their crops? Was it because maybe perhaps he was racist and they were a different, skin color, so he thought he could attack them because he thought they were inferior? Like, these things matter. They add context to the situation. Even if they're incorrect, they add context to the situation. Does that make sense? Even if we look at the stats, or the facts, rather, if we're talking about a historical situation, we look at the facts. Clearly one side provoked the other. Clearly one side was the aggressor. And we look at that, and we see that from a historically accurate perspective. The feelings and experiences of the people that existed in that zone still matter and contextualize the situation. They're both important. It's not all or nothing. That's not how the world works. It's not black and white. It would be easy if it was. Trust me, it would have made my job as a teacher much, much easier. It's not. That's not how it works. And the sooner that you get on that train, the happier you will be. Yeah, my stat teacher in college did an entire week of classes showing how people manipulate stats on TV news. Yeah. And you can just cherry pick whatever you want. Like, you could argue with me and be like, oh, well, Nightlight's self-reported, so it doesn't count. I'm like, okay, then let's go to DBD stats. And I go to DBD stats, and you're like, well, that covers everyone, so that's like just pub matches, so we got to go to comp. And then we go to comp, and you're like, no, not that stat. It's like, you can do that all day. It doesn't fucking matter. You can do that all day. You can do that all you want till you're blue in the face. What, just no stats? We just never talk about anything? Like, that doesn't make any sense. There's no battle. I'm just trying to think logically as possible. No, but like, your logic's flawed. You know what I'm saying? Your logic is flawed. You're saying that I have to completely abide by stats. That's what we're disagreeing on. Because, like, you talk about your personal experiences all the time and how, like, that affects how you feel about the game. But I did it today, and you said, oh, well, there's no stats to back that up. And you've done that to other people in chat before. You've been like, well, there's no stats to back that up. And I'm telling you that both matter. Because that's something that you seem to take issue with, is like, well, there has to be stats to back this up, or else your opinion doesn't matter, or these experiences don't matter, and that's not true. Experiences inform and contextualize stats, or facts, rather, if we're talking about a historical perspective. Experiences contextualize events and facts. They do. So you have to pay attention to both. You have to pay attention to both. You just do. And that's how you get the full picture. Rigo OP, stats don't lie. You're missing the point. Oh. Stats are always manipulative? Yeah. Stats are manipulative. The person could, like, conducting, let's say we're talking about, like, how nice it is to live in rural society. How nice is it to live, like, like, in a farm, growing crops, raising livestock? What if we're taking a poll, right? We're taking a poll of that. And we only poll people who live in rural areas. Not people who may have left rural areas, people that live in cities, people in suburbs. We only poll people living in rural areas. They're probably going to say, this is pretty good because they live there. That's how it works. Stats can be messed up too. But you gotta look at the context. You gotta look at the context. Because then you'd be like, oh, well, maybe that's not the best, sampling because you only sampled people who live there. But if you didn't look, you'd just be like, oh, the stats say it's good to live in rural land. Look, the stats say it. Because you don't have the context. Because all you care about the numbers. That's the problem with behavior in the first place. Because they don't look at the context. That's why we make fun of their stat charts. Because they don't look at the context. They're not looking at the experience versus the hard numbers. They're not contextualizing the numbers. Analyzing data is just as important as the data itself, and if you miss that part, you will be forever lost. You will be forever lost. If you never analyze the data and only listen to the data, you will be forever lost. And that goes for everybody. That goes for everyone. That goes for everybody. That's my rant on stats. Congratulations, you got a small so stays lesson out of me for free. We have to have a consistent way of doing tier lists. For example, the weight of strength of an add-on, same importance than doing average based on like there's so many factors. But like you're arguing to like, well, my feeling, but like you understand what I'm saying? I don't think you get what I'm saying. You're saying that like I should, like you're disagreeing with me and other people in chat before by saying like you shouldn't have that feeling, right? Right? Like here's the part, right? Here's the part. And this might upset you. Here's the thing. We just did this, right? Let me bring this back up. You're like, why'd you put Nurse up there? Because she is the best. From my experiences, from what I've watched, from what I've seen from multiple other tier lists, cross-referencing other people who are way more experienced in the game than I am. Like, there's so many factors that go into that. You're right. But you can't just refute what those things that I've taken into account to put her up there. You can't just say, well, I disagree with you and you're wrong. I mean, you can. But, like, what I'm saying is you can't also tell me, well, you're wrong and you're dumb because, like, you put her up there, right? Like you can disagree all you want. That's fine because you have your own experiences, your own experts that you consult. You know? That's why this is the fun part of this. It's supposed to be the fun part, but people take it too intensely and start making it personal about it. You could disagree all you want. It's like, why is Nurse top there? Why is Nurse up there? You can do that all you want. You can provide plenty of examples of why you think she's not up there. And I will tell you all the examples of why I think she's up there. That's why these debates are healthy and important. But you can't just say, oh, well, I refute your data. I just refute you. I refute you, right? Even if I went out there, did 100, like I did 100 matches as Nurse versus like 100 matches as other killer, using different add-ons, all that stuff, you would still find, you would still find a flaw in my argument, a flaw in my test. We can sit here and do this redundant shit all day. We can sit here and go, well, your test was flaws, or oh, your feelings are flawed. You can't live in this bubble of not achieving any progress whatsoever because you're trying so hard to cherry pick things. You can't do that. You can't do that. It's also just a video game. Let's keep that in mind too. It's just a video game. The balance of this game nobody's lives are significantly affected by me putting Nurse S+ tier instead of S-. It literally doesn't affect doesn't affect a damn thing. Literally does not matter. So why do we need perfect scientific precision? Something's correlation? Yeah, but like those experiences still matter is what I'm trying to tell you. And I'm not mad at you. I'm just very, like, I intensely believe these things. And it's because they've come from years of experience. Like, I've taught stats before. I've taught economics. I've taught stats at the high school level. Like, I am literally trained in this. Trust me. Like, the context and analysis of data matters just as much. And you need to buy into that. I mean, you don't have to. You can continue telling people they're wrong because they don't have hard stats to everything. Like, you can do that. You're just not correct. You're rude. You can keep doing that. It's just... I'm just saying that if you actually want the answer, like, the contextualization of data matters too. And that's what a lot of this stuff is. This is like when like, this isn't scientific. This is me just going, based on my feelings, yeah, you know, like, out of all the matches I've had with Legion versus watching people play Legion, watching, like, Tat, good example of, like, experts play Legion, his opinions on it, people who hate Legion, people who don't like going against Legion, different add-on strengths. Like, I'd say he's probably B+. He's definitely not A tier, but he's pretty good. Especially if he can chain hits and stuff. Some maps are bad for him. Like, a lot of stuff goes into that. But I'm considering that when I put that there. But I don't have to be perfect about that because this is not a hard stat here, right? This isn't me going for the data. If I wanted the data, I would go, like, you know, obviously I can't go get that. But in a different example, like with, like, actual, like, you know, something I could measure, I would go get the stats, right? But, like, this is based on, like, my experience, based on expert opinion. I have 4,000 hours in this game. That's a lot of time. I have an expert opinion. This is correlating other people's expert opinions. Like I said, like Tat. Great streamer. Mains Legion. Other streamers who are Survivor mains that go against Legion all the time. Like, those matter. Those matter. Those are not throwaways. Those are not things that you can just say, those aren't real, throw those away. Contextualizing and analyzing data is just as important as the data itself. And that's what I'm trying to say. Yeah, that's another thing, Progressive. Like, if so many people who are, like, experts in the game say that Nurse is top tier, Why are you telling them they're wrong? The people who are actively, like, you know, in a sense, like, what would be the word, like, research, right? Research the game by, you know, just playing it a bunch and looking at different add-ons and that sort of thing. Like, their expert opinion is that Nurse is the top. You know? And if you get a lot of researchers, quote unquote, in this scenario, telling you that Nurse is top, they are the experts in the field, right? They are the experts in the field. That doesn't mean we should never question them, but that does have their opinions well regarded and highly regarded, right? And it's part of, like what I said, analyzing the data and in the context of the data itself. Yeah, I'm done. I'm done arguing about that. Not arguing, but I'm done piping off. My head hurts. Obstacles is the best. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm done. I'm done with that. I'm done with that tangent. My head hurts. My head hurts a lot. I had a headache before this. Now I have a double headache. It got worse. My headache got worse.